You know, I never thought I'd be teaching APIs using Harry Potter, but here I am. Yes, I'm wearing a onesie just for you. And it doesn't really fit, kind of rides up. In the last nugget, we learned that APIs, if they want to be RESTful APIs, they must go by a certain code, a pirate's code, a code of conduct, and if they follow those rules, then hey, they're a RESTful API. Otherwise, they're just some random API. In this nugget, we're going to take a closer look at rule number 4 of the 6 rules you must follow to be a RESTful API, and it was having a uniform interface. I wasn't going to talk a lot about this one, but I felt like it deserved its own nugget, and we're going to play around with, it's pretty fun, it's pretty cool, the Harry Potter API. Yes, there's a Harry Potter API. There's actually an API for everything. There's even a Star Wars API. You can go watch Ben Finkel's video where he teaches about APIs with Star Wars. So cool. I went the Harry Potter route, and let's talk about it. Let's go. So just a quick refresher on our rules. Here's our 6 rules to be a RESTful API. Our 6 constraints. We covered in depth 1 through 3 already, but we haven't really talked about number 4. Now, how I like to define rule number 4 is this. KISS. You ever seen that acronym? It's keep it simple. No, it's usually stupid. I'm just going to say, Sam. Keep it simple, Sam. That's really the heart behind the uniform interface. Keep it simple. And I'll add to that, and keep it consistent. To show you what I'm talking about, let's go dive into the Harry Potter API. Let's go. The purpose of the Harry Potter API is to get information about the Harry Potter world, similar to what we do with our routers. We want to get information about them. We want to know about them. Hey, what's your host name? And in the same way, in the Harry Potter world, we might want to get a list of all the characters and find out about them. So let's do that. If you want to do this, by the way, it's free. You just got to sign up, create an account, and it'll give you a token to use with your API. Often, when you're interfacing with APIs, you use a token to authenticate. Think of it like an arcade game. You can't play the arcade game unless you put in a token. This is kind of the way, that's how APIs work. So here looking at Postman, a really great tool I can use to quickly test APIs. Now this is making me so hot. When a device or an application has a RESTful API exposed, its RESTful API interface, it's basically like accessing a website, and you'll see that comparison made a lot. It's like using a website. And when we interface with the Harry Potter API, here's the base. Here's where we go. That's the server right there. And just like a website, like any website you go to, when you navigate further, if I went to like the About Me page, it would just be, / About Me. And maybe I would go further in the navigation and go to About Me ice cream. Maybe there's a whole section on my favorite ice cream. That's how websites work, and that's how an API should work if it's a REST API, and if it's obeying rule number 4. Keep it simple, keep it uniform, be consistent. So I'll show you what I mean. So right now if I try to get some information, we'll cover what get means in a moment. It's part of the rule number 4, but we'll cover that in the next nugget. If I try to get the information right now, it's going to say, oh, Muggle error. There's nothing to look at here. You need to further specify some things. So I will look at all the characters in Harry Potter. So I'll do characters, and I'll send. And would you look at that? It's so cool. It gives me a list of every single character in Harry Potter, which just makes me drool. Now, this isn't really a crazy concept. If you were to go to a website and see a URL like this and you were looking at / characters, you might expect a list of characters in Harry Potter. Mind you, it won't be in this format. By the way, you might recall that I told you this is what computers love. Systems, applications, they love this language. This is JSON, JSON. We'll talk more about that in detail later. But getting back to rule number 4, it should be simple like this. So I know if I go to / characters, it should show me a list of characters. I know from looking at the API documentation that if I want to look at, I don't know, maybe the houses at Hogwarts, I can just change characters to houses, looking at a different category. So I'll send that. Gives me a list of houses. Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, Hufflepuff, Slytherin, Hey, what's your house? Let me know in the comments. And also according to the API documentation, notice I keep mentioning that. We'll touch on that here in a moment. If I want to specify one house and just get that information, I can specify by ID. So I would say / and I would just take the ID of Gryffindor, paste that sucker in there, and send. And it's going to reply back with just Gryffindor. So I should expect, just by the way that works, that when I go back to characters, and it gives me this exhaustive list of every character known in Harry Potter, that if I want to look at one specific character, I should be able to specify by ID. So whoever Hannah Abbott is, which I am sorry, Harry Potter fans, I don't remember who that is. I should be able to just send that in the API /ID and get just her information. That's part of the rule number 4 of being uniform. It should be consistent across whatever you want to request in the API. Also notice that whatever information you want to pull from the API, whether it be a certain character like Hannah Abbott, has their own unique URL or URI. That's also part of the rule. Each resource must have its own resource URL or URI. In a similar way, if we look back to my router, get out of Harry Potter world for a moment, I know, who wants to leave? The same thing applies if I go over to my router and I try to get the host name. The object or resource has its own unique URL. And similar to the Harry Potter API, it's uniform in the way it works. So if I were to, let's say, not get the host name, but if I were to get the, the banner. The banner would be its own object. I would send and get that, and boom, I got the banner back. Wingardium Leviosa. I was able to figure that out because I know that, hey, Cisco in global configuration mode, that's a global configuration setting, and I thought it might be there. Now, something else we can do is we can also filter the results. If I go back to just characters and I send and get my massive list of characters, maybe I'm a bad dude, and I want to find the blood status of, if you watch Harry Potter, you'll understand. Basically, half-blood means they're half human, half wizard, just so you know. Now, hey, you learned something. Maybe I want to find all the half-bloods in Harry Potter. So I can filter that. I can say question mark, that's commonly what we'll see. It's kind of like the where this equals that situation. I can say question mark, blood status equals half-blood. And we'll get a list of all the half-bloods. And this is a great time to kind of stop it and look at our URI and analyze the elements of it, while still talking about rule number 4. So looking here, we can see that this is our protocol, as you might expect, HTTP. Now this is a part of rule number 4. It has to be consistent. It doesn't have to use HTTP, even though that's more commonly what you'll see when you're using REST APIs. You think REST, you think HTTP. It doesn't have to use HTTP. But if it does choose HTTP, it better stick with HTTP. Don't change. That's part of it. We then have our server portion right here. In this example, it's the website of the Harry Potter API. And in the example of accessing our router, it would be the IP address of our router, starting at v1 and going all the way just to, actually right here, v1/characters, that's the resource. And then this right here, everything with a question mark and on, are parameters you can set. That's not the only type of parameter, but that is one of them. Now, also part of the rule number 4, the uniform interface, is something we haven't really touched on yet, and we're going to cover in the next nugget, but it's this right here, the get. What is that? Well, it's one of the actions we can use with this API. We've got get, and we've got a bunch of other stuff. So far with our RESTful router APIs, we've been able to get information, but also change information. We'll talk about those verbs, those actions we can use. But part of the rule number 4 is that those verbs and actions must be clearly defined, and the API must let us know how we can change and modify or just simply retrieve information. That's what makes a great RESTful API. So using the magic of Harry Potter, we explored rule number 4 of APIs. They must be KISS. Keep it simple, Sam. And they must be consistent in how we access them, how we navigate them, how we interact with them. That's the mark of a truly great REST API, or just a regular REST API. If you don't obey those rules, then you're not a REST API. And the next nugget, we'll look at the verbs, how we interact and do things and interact with our APIs, basically. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.